Hi everyone, I'm Tia with Order of the Bookish. I'm so excited to introduce another author to you guys. This is PB Flower. She is such an incredible writer. Truly, everyone has nothing but great things to say about all of her stories. Specifically, I subscribe, which is what I know her as. So let's get into it. PB, can you tell us, first of all, about your books, but specifically, I want to hear about how you've combined sci-fi with metaphysical principles and sciences, because that sounds like such a big endeavor.
Yeah, I think it has got to do with where I drew my inspiration for writing from. So I have always been a science student. I love science, especially quantum physics. And the as far the metaphysical theories and philosophy, it is because of my husband. He introduced me to someone called UG Krishnamurti. He's like a big philosopher in India, from India actually. And so I got into philosophy because of that. And my husband has a lot of metaphysical theories that he discusses with me all the time. So that's where that bent has come from. So these are some of my inspirations. And as for I Subscribe, it actually happens to be my favorite book of all the six books that I have written. And it is actually a prequel of a book called Yama Eko Maya, but I Subscribe as a standalone novel and it can be read on its own. And it is actually set in a dystopian world. This is like an abstract narrative which unfolds through a monologue of three protagonists, actually. And the story reveals how human beings thrive on validation for their actions, while thought, which is a sentient AI, according to me, feels alive when we question, communicate, and share our knowledge. And everything in this universe seems to be, encapsulated in thought. The software, I call it a software, which actually rationalizes all concepts of creation. So a famous philosopher, Rene Descartes, said, "I think, therefore I am." So, the thought movement is what says anything is alive. So the main character in this book, I Subscribe, is very determined to end thought's domination over humans. And so he wants to replace humans with an organic counterpart that are immune to thought's influence. However, his mission obviously falters when he falls in love with a human, complicating his struggle against thought's unchecked control. So that's what I Subscribe is all about. And I want to show my book if I can.
Show me all the books, whatever you have in front of you. It's a very cool idea, and it must have. Can you tell me about like the writing process behind that? Because that's such a deep thing to plan out and to put into a book. How did you manage to put these theories together in a way that's readable?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, UG Krishnamurti, he has been my inspiration. And I think he was the only philosopher who I saw had thought as his central theme. Everything that he said, it will all converge to thought being the problem and thought being the reason behind anything that we humans do. So I was very intrigued by that. And that's why I wrote this book, I Subscribe, putting thought as a central theme in there. Of course, there's a lot of other things going on in there. And I think to make this heavy philosophy that I include in my book more palatable for everyone, I infused romance in it. That's my reason to infuse romance. Of course, I mean, there is quantum physics in it. There's a lot of other science fiction principles in there. But I think mainly I would like to say that my book uh, has a central theme of romance in it. Of course, there's thought that's dominating, but I still feel that it is sci-fi romance. And I think it was easier for me to incorporate all these different elements in there because that's how I flow. Like when I start writing, of course I'm a plotter. So, but when I start writing, it just flows in all of the things, all of these elements, different elements. Now, how no matter how diverse they are, I am just able to write, mix them up in my story.
I would hope that you're a plotter. I don't know how you would be able to write a book so deep and profound and philosophical, just going with the flow.
Yeah, yeah, I have to. Yeah, I use a lot of tools actually, and OneNote is my go-to tool, Microsoft OneNote. I do a lot of my plotting over there. I have spreadsheets also.
Mhm. I love the spreadsheets. I use spreadsheets for my book too. Otherwise, I would lose track of everything.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So, do all of your books have similar formatting where there's like elements of sci-fi and romance, but also elements of philosophy?
Yeah, so I would say that I have written 6 books, and they can be squeezed under sci-fi romance genre, but they all have thought-provoking themes that question the status quo. So I think that's pretty much common in all of the books that I have written so far. But yeah, there are like other elements in there. But I think just like my inspiration, UG Krishnamurti, I think I have thought as the central theme. Thought is what is, causing all the problems, and thought is it's not the culprit. I haven't shown it as a culprit, but it's the reason why we are here, why we feel alive, I think. Yeah.
So, a little bit of a hot take. You did mention that your characters are essentially AI. How do you feel you published this book a few years ago, a couple years ago, when AI was just starting to really enter the publishing industry? How do you feel about it now? Do you think it's like taking over? Do we think it's a good thing, a bad thing? What are your thoughts about AI, specifically in our publishing community?
Yeah, so the tropes, I think the tropes that I use in my books, and I have to mention this, that All Call None was my debut work. It's a trilogy actually, and I published that in 2021, and AI is there in it as well. So I have been fascinated with AI, when it started actually, because that's only because my husband is in that field.
Mhm.
So I knew about it from the very beginning. And I used to be in that field too, but I left in 2015. I retired. I took an early retirement, and I am now a stay-at-home mom. So AI is nothing new for me, but and I have been playing with it from my early work, like my debut work, and so of course it evolved more and more as I progressed into writing. But I think since I write science fiction, it was very easy for me to incorporate artificial intelligence in there. And there are so many people also speculating about it, and it's a hot topic right now, definitely. But I think it wasn't something new for me. And I'm happy that I have written something from so early on, and
Mhm.
I'm not like jumping in the bandwagon as it is, becoming something trending right now.
Yeah, you were one of the first to actually publish about this topic. So I would consider you at this point like an expert. Not only do you have a background in the field and your husband has a background in the field, but you were one of the first to publish on this topic and start exploring what it means to us human beings to have artificial intelligence so deeply ingrained in our lives.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, it might sound very controversial, but my book, Yama Eko Maya, it actually speculates that humans are the first species that have been inoculated with artificial intelligence. And since we as human beings, all we do is replicate, like we look at the nature, we look at all the concepts that are out there, and we try and replicate that into machines. And so one day, it is no wonder that one day we will definitely create an AI being because we want to replicate. And so we are the only ones who are left to be replicated. And I think when we create that AI being, it'll definitely have ability to process thought also, because right now that's what we are lacking in AI. It's not sentient.
Mhm.
So I think once that happens, I mean, I think it's definitely going to happen. That's what
Yeah.
I believe.
I think it might have already happened and it just hasn't hit the public yet. Like they're
Yeah.
keeping it secret. Like I know Hollywood and the government has been using AI for a long time now, many years before it hit the public. And I have no doubt that they've already if not have created it, have at least gotten very close to creating an AI being that is sentient, that does have thought. So, just philosophical question, and your own opinion. Since we as humans have thought, and thought is what makes us human, if AI starts having thought, does that mean AI now becomes human, or is it going to be like a subhuman species?
This is the perfect question for me right now. And why? Because in my book, I subscribe, I have questioned, this main character questions the other main character, like that, what do you think is human? Because that person is very worried that they are not human anymore or AIs are taking over. And so he asked that question, what do you think is human? And when we ask that question to ourselves, I think we will understand that it's very hard to define a human being. And because if you start defining, human beings are nothing but ideas. We do not identify with the body, but all the ideas that we subscribe to. And that's why I named my book I Subscribe, because it means that as humans, we are born, we as soon as we are born, we start subscribing to ideas. And that's who we are. And when someone dies, we celebrate, or we talk about all the ideas that they had subscribed to, and they lived through the ideas that they had subscribed to through us. So I think that's the main thing, that AI beings, I think they are just a new vessel for the thought, because thought wants to continue. In my in From my perspective, I think thought just is an entity, is a lifeless entity that wants to continue, and it will latch on to the most perfect vessel capable of processing it. And if it is the AI being, then it's just going to leave us alone and jump into that, or maybe we'll continue to process thought just the way we are, and AI beings will, be more advanced than human beings. That's what I believe.
Interesting. So, as you're speaking, I can't help but compare the idea of thoughts being its own thing, separate from us and our human bodies, to one, the soul, like our souls, because what you're describing thought as sort of sounds like what many people describe a soul as being separate from the body, and something that continues on regardless of if it's in a body or not. But then also, because I am always in like a fantasy mindset, it also kind of sounds like Horcruxes, like Voldemort's Horcruxes from Harry Potter, how pieces of his soul left latch on and continue on their own without him being connected to it. So are thoughts kind of like a soul?
So what I believe, I think it's comparative, definitely, like you said. But what I believe is, I think the idea of soul that we have, I have translated that into memory.
Mm.
So it's all our memories that gets or is detached from the body and leaves, and merges into whatever you want to call it, universal consciousness or universal mind. And so it merges there, and then it might, whenever it might, show up into another body, another vessel. And that's why I think the idea of reincarnation has come from, where people, remember things from, they say from previous life, but I think it's just, memory that has come into them. Because soul to me is nothing but memories, this collective set of memories that made
Yeah, that
us.
completely makes sense. So do you think thoughts are coming from memory, or are memories coming from independent thoughts?
Okay,
Does that
so
make sense?
here's the thing. I think thought and memory are interchangeable,
Okay.
because thought is nothing without reflection.
Yeah.
You have to reflect on everything. And reflection is not possible without memory.
Hmm.
So I think thought and memory are interchangeable. So they could be one and the same.
Hmm. I'm kind of picturing it as a cyclical thing where yes, you like which came first, the chicken or the egg, but you can't have one without the other. Like thought is an analysis of a memory.
Yes, yes. And I would like to loop in grandfather paradox into it, because that's the main theme in my book, Ace Umbra, which was just released traditionally in December 2024, so just like a month ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so in grandfather paradox, what you just mentioned is what happens is that you there's something wrong. You want to travel back in time to fix it. But because you're fixing it, that's why that problem has arisen. So it's such a loop. It's kind of like that chicken and egg loop.
Mhm.
So it all happens because um, it's a paradox, I think. It's a
Yeah,
big paradox, and I think we will be dealing with it if at some point we have the ability to time travel.
if we're not already. Just saying, I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of things they don't tell us.
Yep.
All right, so I feel like I could talk about this all day. I'm sure you could too. I want to talk a little bit about the publishing that you've been through because you are self-published and traditionally published. Can you tell me about the process of both, maybe some struggles that you felt going through both avenues?
Yes, sure. So I began my self-publishing journey in 2021 with my debut trilogy, All Kal Nan. And gosh, I was so naive when I started that process. I was self-publishing everything. I never even thought of sending my manuscripts anywhere. I was like, my husband told me that, hey, I've heard that Amazon, you can go ahead, you can go and put your work on Amazon and publish it, that very day. That's how easy it is. So, and I knew that traditional publishing takes a long time and it's a big process. So I was like, okay, yeah, I think that sounds good. And so I started writing my book and I completed my trilogy in like 4 or 5 months, I think.
Wow.
And I just put my first book out there like immediately. And I shouldn't have done that. And there was no one to tell me that that's not how you do things. And
Mhm.
gosh, I think I have destroyed my brand name because of how easy this process is.
Yeah.
And and so we have to know about this, and on all the aspiring authors, I think, should know about this, that brand name means everything. And even though self-publishing is really easy, easy in the sense to publish your book, not to write and the marketing process. I'm not talking about that, but just to publish your work.
Yeah.
It's very easy to do that these days.
Mhm.
There are so many platforms that offer that.
Yeah.
But I think you have to be very sure before you hit that publish button.
Mhm.
Okay,
Absolutely.
your script needs to be revised. Your manuscript needs to be revised 100 times, if not more, and it has to be properly edited. I know editing is a big process, and it really costs a lot of money,
Mhm.
but it's worth the price. And I think people should also um, put in time and effort and maybe money into creating their covers,
Mhm.
which I think a lot of people don't do that. But actually, most people do put in effort because I'm yet
Oh,
to
you'd be
see a really
surprised. I get a lot of emails.
so I think these are the things that I learned while I learned on my own because I didn't know anyone. There were no authors, no writers in my family. Nobody had ever published a book. So I didn't know anything. And so I just dived into it. And because of how easy it is, I made so many mistakes. And so now I have learned, and it's just bad that I have learned from my mistakes and not others' mistakes. And so but I have evolved, and I now know how difficult it is and how much effort you really need to put in before you publish your book, no matter how easy it is to do that. It's just a few clicks online. And that's when I really polished everything. That's when I was very comfortable, and I um, started sending out my manuscript for my book Asambra, and that's when it got accepted. And none of my other books would have been accepted. And I think still I need to work on them. I mean, I know a writer's job is never finished. Every time you go and visit your manuscript, you'll find something that you would want to change.
Yeah.
But I think I have learned from my mistakes, and that's why I think my manuscript was finally accepted
Mhm.
because I knew what to do. Of course, there's no formula for it, but that's what I feel because I have learned from my mistakes that I knew how to, publish a book finally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, self-publishing, no one really tells you how to do it, and there's so much information out there and so many different ways you can self-publish that it can feel so overwhelming. That's one of the things I like to do with Order of the Bookish is just to have one, an open channel where authors can just ask me questions whenever, and also just resources where I very clearly say, these are the steps and this is what you should do. And I fully agree with you that if you're going to spend money on anything in the self-publishing process, it should be your cover design because whether we like it or not, people buy and judge books by the cover and editing.
Mhm.
Like you need to have a very well edited book, especially because right now we're in such a landscape where it's so easy to publish and there's so many books out there. It's like thousands and thousands get published every year. So to stay competitive, you need to have that beautiful cover and you need to have a well edited book. If it's not well edited, it's so easy for readers to just not finish reading it and move on to something else.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, it just destroys your brand name.
Yeah.
So, and it is very difficult to build it again. So, yeah, I agree with you. And thankfully, Order of the Bookish is there. Like you said, you have started this thing where you are there to help the aspiring authors and even the authors who have already published.
Yeah, yeah, either one. I originally started just like helping out indie authors who had recently published and kind of maybe did it wrong and helping just to fix a little bit of it. But now I work with even traditionally published authors who truly have no idea either. Like their publishers, for some reason, are not talking to them and not telling them, hey, this is how we do things. This is how you market. This is how you reach a wider audience. This is how you set up a brand. And that communication just isn't happening for indie authors or traditionally published authors. So I would like to be that platform that can just like very simply answer questions and be there as support. And I love to see that you, one, understand about author branding and that you're actually doing it. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, what is your brand? How did you know to have one and what do you do to build it?
Yeah, so I it was a learning process and it took a long time for me to understand that. But I now know that I am actually someone who publishes a genre mashup. So I'm not sticking to one genre. And although it makes it very difficult for me to find a reader base that would enjoy every aspect and every element of my story, but I think there are people like that out there. And even if they aren't, there are some parts of it which they will enjoy. So I feel that I'm not going to, change my style or, limit my creativity because of that. I will continue to do that. And that's my brand. I infuse philosophy, I infuse romance, and I also have quantum physics in my work. And obviously, I have a lot of Indic mythology inspiration in there as well, because I'm Indian by origin. So, and I have read a lot of Indic mythology. So I infuse that as well. So, yeah, it's a genre mashup, but that's my brand.
I think that's so cool and probably a really hard thing to do to have so many different elements combined together, but you've done it so successfully. I mean, I've stalked your social media, I see your books, and even just your covers and your blurbs. Yes, there's a lot of different elements, but you woven them together so seamlessly that they feel like one thing. Like you kind of created your own genre, which feels very cool.
Thank you.
And you've done it successfully. And you were saying that it's kind of hard to reach readers, but I have to disagree. I saw how many reviews you have for I Subscribe on Amazon. You have well over 200. And that's certainly one of the hardest things for indie authors to do is to get those reviews on Amazon. Because, those reviews are important. That's how you get boosted on the algorithm. That's how you get validation. So can you tell me about the process of you getting those reviews?
I actually have no idea. I think maybe it is Amazon that did it because early on I promoted my book on Instagram only. And then I saw there was nothing happening. So I waited for like 2, 3 months and things didn't move the way I liked. And I know that you need that threshold is I think 50 reviews
I think
when
it's gone up to
Amazon
like
will
150 at
actually
this point. Yeah.
so I was like, okay, what do I do now? And it's so hard to get even one review.
Yeah.
if when you are self-published author, it's
Hmm.
hard. And there are so many people who are conning these
Hmm.
emerging authors, new authors who don't have any experience. They'll ask for money,
Hmm.
paid
Yeah.
reviews and stuff. So it was really hard. So I was like, um, I was lost. So my husband said, "Yeah, why don't you go to Goodreads, and try something there?" So that's when I ran a Goodreads. They have a giveaways. So I ran Goodreads giveaway. And I think that's where my
Mm.
readers have come from. So I would say that for my reader base, Goodreads was the best place to
Mhm.
go. Not TikTok, not Netflix. Oh, sorry, Netflix,
That's a good.
NetGalley.
I got it. Yeah.
Not NetGalley. NetGalley also didn't work for me. And I think NetGalley would work very well for romance authors because there are lots of romance readers there. But for my reader base, I think Goodreads is the place to go.
I love that you experimented and you found the thing that works best for you. So now you know for all your books, Goodreads giveaway is the place to go. You've gotten the experimenting out of the way.
Yeah.
Were there any other struggles that you faced when you self-published specifically, besides, getting the reviews and that little bit of learning curve? Were there anything else that you didn't really do right the first time, but now you got the hang of it?
Yeah, so I think the main thing that I struggled with, I think most of the authors struggle with that is blurb, writing the blurb, writing the elevator pitch, because elevator pitch is even more short, like shorter than blurb. And you've already, like I had the trilogy, my debut work is a trilogy, and each book is like 350 pages. How do I write a blurb for, you know,
Yeah.
how do I write a blurb for that?
Hmm.
But now I have got the hang of it. I know how to do it. And I also know how to shorten that further and write an elevator pitch. And then I struggled with writing prologues and epilogues because I wanted that in my book. I didn't have that when I started, and I really wanted that. And not many people understand what a prologue is, because prologue is something which I actually learned from a traditionally published author who works for Penguin India.
Hmm.
So this person actually explained it to me, and I'm really thankful for that. That prologue is something, especially for sci-fi books. Prologue is something where your readers can read the whole book, and then when they come and read the prologue, the whole story should make sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's what a prologue should be.
Hmm.
And then he also told me what epilogue is. Epilogue is something where your story, all the loose ends from your story, everything should tie down by that point. And I don't have those two in all my books right now. I have prologues, I have included that now. But I think I'm still struggling with epilogue right now.
Hmm.
So,
I love reading prologues. I know there's a lot of readers out there who say they skip it and they don't read it at all, but I love reading it in the beginning because I know that when it's done right, it will tie everything together. It's like a sneak peek into what's going to happen. And I love that you can kind of do anything with a prologue. You can make it a different point of view, a different time period. So what do you do with your prologues? Like how are they formatted? How are they different than the actual story?
yeah, I I have to be very careful when writing the prologue. I can't be repeating things at what's going on in the story so that readers don't get bored when they start reading the story. So what I do is I make it as something like a sequel kind, something that will set the premise for the story. So I think that helps a lot. And especially with sci-fi stories, I think setting the premise really helps. So that's what I do. And I kind of summarize the whole story without giving away the story.
Mhm.
So that's what I try to do.
Okay, very cool. I like that you have that because going into sci-fi and fantasy with all the like crazy world building, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming at first. And I like prologues and I like when I understand before I jump in. All right, so I have loved talking to you. We need to do this again for your other books. I know we've talked mostly about I Subscribe because that's the one I know you as. That's the really popular one on Amazon. But you have so much happening, and I assume you have more books coming out. I hope anyway.
Yes, I have actually a work in progress right now that I'm working on, and I have actually submitted the manuscript with a traditional publisher, and it looks good. I'm very hopeful. So let's see how that goes. And if everything goes well, I think it'll be by the end of the year that I will be able to release that book. And I think I don't want to say too much and jinx it at this
Don't
point,
say any
but
more, it's
but
okay.
I'm very excited about it right now.
Me too. I'm excited to hear that you have more coming out. I want to see you continue down this path and just have a really successful author career and just like live your life at home. That's the dream.
Thank you.
All right, so I hope to talk to you soon. Before we end, do you have any last minute information that you want to tell readers who might be interested in your books?
Yeah, I think don't be afraid of science fiction because most readers are afraid of that. Ruby Dixon is a good example. She writes sci-fi, but her books have so many other elements in it. And that's how my books are. They are sci-fi, but they have lots of other elements in it. And even if you haven't read books that have philosophy in them, or read books that are thought-provoking or question the status quo, you will have a lot to take away from them. You will end up learning something from them. And if not learn, you would at least get a different perspective from my books. So please do give it a chance.
And leave a review. Don't forget to leave the review. Those are important to
Yes.
indie authors. All right,
Yes.
well, thank you so much for joining me today. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another Author Talks interview. This is PB Flower. I'm going to link all of her stuff below, her books, her website, her socials, so you can follow her journey and her stories. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Happy reading and happy writing. Thank you so much for tuning in to another author interview with me. I'm Tia at Order of the Bookish. Make sure you subscribe to all the Order of the Bookish channels for more updates on news, trends, marketing tips, and self-published authors and their books, because we have so much coming this year and you don't want to miss out on any of it. Make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for the next author interview coming next Friday.